What events in your life would lead you to be the mayor of Bakersfield? Today we're going to answer that question. Our guest is Mayor Karen Goh. Mayor Karen, we're so proud to have you on our show.
Thank you so much. It's a joy to be here.
Yeah, I love it. And Mike Maggard, we're always, you and I have had a lot of experiences. We've been to Mulahay together and Ethiopia together. So
we've had some time.
We had a lot.
We're not done yet.
No, we're not done yet. A lot of fun conversations coming up. Mayor, my wife Tiffany, who was our guest last week. Every time she sees me and I'm around our mayor, she goes, "How does she do it? How does she have the energy?" Because I think everywhere. I mean, yeah, I told my wife the other night, I think you have some body doubles out there.
We have an amazing community, and it's just a pleasure to serve. And so you just serve.
You do. You show up everywhere. I love that. So we're glad you joined in today. If you would like us and share us, we would like that to happen. We feel that we are providing a service out there. And if you do, like us, share us, tell your friends about it, because we're having a great show today. Doing a lot of new things here. And we're going to be able to drop a show talking about some of the new things that we're doing here. So if you would like to ask any questions about today's show, you can send it on Facebook to the Real Lunch Break Show. I like that. It rolls off my tongue really well.
The Real
Lunch Break Show. Our producer, Mike Harvey, came up with that. And I think he was saying there's a lot of lunch break shows out there, so how do we distinguish ourselves? So I if we get in trouble, I'll blame Mike Harvey. So he takes care of it. Also on Instagram, at the Real Lunch Break Show. So if you like us, follow us. We're up to almost 3,000, I think 2,700 organic followers on our lunch break page.
By the time this airs, it'll be probably well over 5, 6, 7,000.
I like that. Mike works hard behind the scene, and we have our Nathaniel Tweed over there, and so the rest of our crew. So we have a question that came in last week from, actually I got to do a show with my wife. Get to do it, we had it, and my wife came on, and
Did you let her talk?
I did, and she had some complaints, Mike Harvey. We got into kind of a marital discussion at our house about her show, and but she did a great job. She has a chronic illness, Crohn's, and she talked about coming from out of the classroom and getting used to a new life. When she came back to work, she wasn't in the classroom, but she fought her way back in education, went into the classroom, and now is the superintendent at Elk Hill School District. So the question from our audience came in the form of, how do you find the motivation to continue your journey after a negative event in your life? And I've shared with our audience before, but I've never had a chance to share with an inspiration, Mike, and you were that last year for me. And I always tell everybody, you have to have other people in your life. You have to make an investment in other people's life, because there's sometimes you have to make a withdrawal. Last year, I made a withdrawal from Mike Maggard. He was sitting next to me, and we were at an event at our church, and he leaned over and he just said, "How you doing, Tom?" And I wasn't doing great. And I looked at him and I just said, "Hey, I'm making it." And he says, and he asked me, he goes, "I've had some friends that were bulletproof." Is that a phrase that you use, Mike?
Yes.
It is? I'd never heard it before.
We have a veneer of invulnerability about us. Most men do, so we think we're bulletproof, but we're not.
No, we aren't. Because I was feeling it at that moment. I think at the moment you told me, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get back and be able to train, physically anymore. My doctor said, "Hey, we just got to do some tests to see if you can withstand that." So Mike asked me that, and what Mike, you told me, you said, "Tom, you're going to come back slowly. I've had a lot of friends who've been here, but you will make it back." And that was a very confident suggestion from you that sunk in. And I went home, and she asked me, she goes, "How'd the night go?" I go, "Well, I had a pretty interesting moment with Mike Maggard." Mike had just shared with me that, hey, if, a lot of men who think they're bulletproof have a traumatic event in their life, you'll make it back, but it'll be slowly. And so I've as far as I've felt, I've made it back. Mike Harvey and I went to Las Vegas, and how old are you, Michael?
I just turned 40, actually.
And what was the comment you gave me after our Las Vegas trip?
I was super impressed. Tom is the only guy that's 60 plus that's able to keep up with me. I'm a pretty high, fast-paced guy like Adrian. You guys know Adrian. He is too. But Tom kept up with me pretty well.
So, Mike, I think I can tell you I did make it back. and I am.
I knew you would.
Well, you did, but it was such an impact. I had such a negative event, but sitting there with you, and I felt it was really kind of a thing that I had to go to because I wanted to support our church, and I got to sit with you, and I actually gained something from being there. So
Sometimes we need to ask just a question that goes just a little bit deeper than, "Hey, how are you, Tom?" That's not what I was talking about.
Yeah, because I just said, "Oh, fine, Mike."
Yeah, you got to get a little deeper.
Yeah. So you got to have people around you. So that's my experience. Mike, anything ever come in your life where you've had to make a, climb back out?
When Mary and I were a young couple, and our children were young, she had a fatal diagnosis, and she wasn't supposed to live, and that changed our whole world. And God gave us a miracle, and she got well, and you'd never know she was sick now, but we know that happened. And we used to say it was like walking around with a grenade in our pocket. We knew it could go off,
yes,
but you have to become comfortable and confident that you can live your life even if you have a grenade in your pocket, because as long as you hold on to it, it's not going to go off. And we just learned to live that way, and it does take a while. But in our life, it made, as horrible as that experience was and all that went along with it for her, it made our life better. Our life is better today because of that experience.
I can say the same thing because my wife was on the show last week and shared her experience. Same thing. People meet her and they go, Tom says you're sick. You don't look sick. But they don't wake up with us, right?
Yeah. The low point was one night I had to slide my hand across the bed to poke her in the back to see if she was still breathing.
Yes.
That was a sober moment. And we're 100% back from there. So
I don't know if you ever lose that because I did that this morning. My wife's out at the Taft parade tonight, and so she just told the schools that she wasn't coming in. So I had to, you got to get up. You got to get to the school. So that's funny stuff. Huh. How about you, Mayor Goh?
Well, for me, it was a September day, and an assistant called me to the window saying a plane has crashed into a tower. And I'm thinking,
where were you at when this happened?
I was in New York. I was in New York office, very, very high floor. And I'm thinking, everybody knows that the Twin Towers are there. It's got to be mechanical failure. Walking over, standing by the window, and one of my colleagues says, "Look, that plane's getting close." And that was the second plane. And at that moment, we knew that life would never be the same for any of us.
So you were an eyewitness.
An eyewitness to something that's impacted really all of us. I think
whole world.
The whole world's been impacted by that event. And for many of us on the floor where I was, there were Ivy League educated executives, Prada shoes, Armani suits, lots of power, lots of wealth, and it didn't matter on that day.
Just one group of people.
Just one group of people. And I think what we came to realize is the brevity of life. But I saw some of my colleagues who were so consumed with fear, people who were super confident the day before or even that morning, consumed with fear, paralyzed. But for me, what I got to see was that my entire life has been dependent on God. And no matter what really happens, we're not really in control of all of that.
That is important for everyone to hear, isn't it? Not in control.
Yeah, not in control, even though we really did think we were in control. But realizing that in those catastrophic moments that God is still in control and I can trust him with my life. But what an amazing event that was. You know, we talk about things being surreal, and that's an overused word, but that really was on that day, and the events that followed as we all began to realize that somehow we would either be consumed with tragedy and let the tragedy define us, or move on and say, we're going to let good come out of something that is horrible.
That's the commonality of your experience, and my experience.
Yes.
Something good came out of something that could have changed much for the worse of the rest of our lives. And that's what faith does, don't you think?
Absolutely.
You recognize somebody else is in control, that you are not, and that you have hope, a reason to dream of a day, someday that's going to be different than how it feels right now.
because now you're in Bakersfield, but the steps to get here had to get through that day and the days to come. I remember, Mike, you were sharing at our men's conference, I think a year ago, when you were on a satellite phone call with Andrew. And he was ready to go into battle, wasn't he? Is that something you shared? Yeah.
Well, he and I have talked a lot about my son is a combat infantry guy that works for Special Operations Command, and there are moments that I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but there's a time he said to me, I said to him, son, you do whatever it takes to come home, and we'll deal with it when you get back here, whatever it takes. And he looked at me and he smiled and said, I got to go, Dad. I got to take care of my men.
Yeah.
And his face turned, and he wasn't there anymore. You know, his body was still there, but his emotions and everything had already turned to this thing he had to deal with. And that, you know, it's as horrible as war is, the real part, the messy part of war is, you know, he's a much stronger man of faith today than when he walked in there the first time.
I didn't get a lot of sleep on last Saturday morning. I got a phone call from my daughter who lives in Tennessee, and she was in her bathtub with the cats because they're having a terrible tornado in Kentucky, which was just close to where they were. And then she was sending us videos, and just to intensify that moment that, you know, you're so far away, but you can't do anything, but you can pray. You can trust God because there is hope in that, and she's fine. Everybody, he keeps asking. My brother just texted me tonight, goes, "Is Tessa okay for the tornado?" I go, "Yeah, she's fine." She had to spend a little bit of time with her cats in the bathtub, but it is. So I love that, Karen. I love that, how you do that. We would like to thank everybody, because I just talked to Meredith Carter and John Haddad about Lucky's Rescue. And all the puppies are almost gone, but they're not all gone, but they're almost all gone. So today we have Cole. Cole's there. He's a handsome bi-eyed German Shepherd. It looks like he's a Shepherd mix. And he has a handsome bow tie on. And
he does.
Meredith, you do a great job getting these animals set up, and they do a great job getting them adopted out. So we're here just making you aware that if you would like to adopt Cole, he is available to be adopted, and he's coming from a closed colony, which means he hasn't been exposed to anything, and he's had all his shots. So I think we have our the website you can go to bring up Lucky's Rescue. And I think, Mike, we have a phone number nowadays too, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
I'm putting Mike on the spot. He's pretty quick.
No, we just got that, and I actually just reached out to
Anna.
I just reached out to Anna literally while we're recording this.
Oh, good. Because you knew I was going to ask you,
I
didn't
knew
you?
you were going to ask. I said I want to be prepared for when that question comes up.
Yeah, you have the mic, you have the control, right? That's awesome. Mayor Goh, can you just walk us through some of your life? We have some pictures. And now I remember a moment. You may have forgotten it. I remember it because Pastor Ron came to me one day and he goes, "Tom, let's have a mayoral event at our church." And I go,
A debate.
Well, he said debate. And I go, "So you really want to debate?" You know, because I've seen those things. Never participated in one, but I've seen those things. And Pastor Ron, who always loved to be community-minded, our senior pastor, who just got back from Vegas, and he wanted to have this.
He was preaching in Vegas.
Yes, he was. Oh, gosh, Mike. I run past that too quickly sometimes. We used to do an event there. Remember that, Mike? And you had to preface it real slowly and deliberately why we were there and what we were doing. But, yeah, we have a church in Vegas doing well. Doug was in our pulpit yesterday. But we were there. And, Mayor Goh, I think there was probably maybe 20 people at our church that day. And I came home. And my wife goes, "How'd it go?" I go, "Somebody stood out, literally stood out." I think you were in the second or third row, and Pastor Ron had people introduce themselves. And Mayor Goh, you got up and stood on the chair. Do you remember that moment?
How many people did you run against?
There were 25 of us who ran, so 24 people who ran against me.
And they all showed up, and they were there at the church. But Karen stood on the chair and just stood out. I have to say that. I mean, I was impressed that night because I went home and Tiffany goes, "So how was it?" And I go, "I loved it." And somebody stood out literally. I told her that you stepped on a chair. My wife is a big fan of yours. Just got to tell you that she does.
Well, I'm a big fan of God.
Yeah.
Because how does an ordinary person who was not even born in this country, I was born in India.
Really? I didn't know.
How does an ordinary person have this extraordinary life and get to be the mayor of the ninth largest city in California? It doesn't just happen.
We're like in the top 50 biggest cities in the country.
We are. We're really, really
Little
big.
Bakersfield.
In the country.
Yeah. So just an amazing, amazing journey. But I just watch how God has prepared my life. So born in India, lived in England, and I came to Bakersfield as a child. I always had this conflict when I was in high school between the arts and the sciences. So I went to USC as a pre-med major, ready to be a doctor, sitting in a concert, and I have my epiphany. I'm going to change my major to music. Now imagine that phone call home.
Oh, I got
Your
one
dad.
similar to that. Yeah, I went to political science from philosophy and a lawyer.
Yes, but just grateful that my parents were really supportive. But what happened out of that change is the journey that took me to New York. And so I had this wonderful mentor in grad school. She was asked to be the keynote speaker for a national music conference where people from all over the United States and internationally traveling also were going to come and listen to her. And she gave me a little moment on her program to do a demonstration. And some people from New York saw me in the audience, and we developed that relationship, which eventually then took me to New York, where I thought I was going back there for 5 to 6 months, and it ended up being a career. But I'd never been to New York City before, and it ended up I had that opportunity to be in the Big Apple, to be in a Fortune 500 company, and have amazing, amazing opportunities. So I started off on the product development creative side, and then got to work my way up through managing editor and then a couple of vice president positions. But what happened in that process, I went from the creative side where all the other people on the contracts, the financial side, they'd look at us and they'd go, "You fiscally irresponsible people." And then we'd say back to them, "You're stifling our creativity if you only give us some money." But I got to navigate both of those worlds and see the creative side and then also the fiscally responsible side and grow in that experience.
Was that helpful to you, Karen? Because I sometimes might go through that with our church. I get the young technical side, wanting to do something new, and then we got the older side, saying, "But we got to make sure we can make money to keep you guys paid." So, did you enjoy that process?
I did, and being able to see two worlds come together, it actually ended up being. I had positions kind of created for me so I could bring the two worlds together. So we had all the artists who created, the musicians, all of the writers and all. And then you had the other side, the contracts side, the fiscal side, but bringing all of that together to create a wonderful product. And so I had that wonderful experience that then prepared me for the journey ahead. So in 2005, I came back to Bakersfield to be with my mother during her final days. And I thought I would go back to New York. I loved everything there was about New York. I loved the life. I loved the culture. And then I got involved with a nonprofit. My brother, who is the founder of Garden Pathways, asked me to just
Tell
stay
me
for a
who your
while.
brother is.
My brother, Pastor David Goh of the Garden
Great
Church.
man, great church, does a lot of amazing things. I love your brother.
He asked me to help out in the after-school performing arts program of Garden Pathways and asked me to stay for 6 weeks. I said 5. I'm going back to New York after that. So after
You
working
negotiated.
together, he said, "Oh, come upstairs and let's look at family-to-family mentoring." And pretty soon I got to see how the investment in the lives of people who are going through the most challenging experiences, coming out of violence, coming out of abuse, coming out of poverty, an investment through mentoring could change the
Mentoring's
future
amazing.
forever. And so the board of Garden Pathways asked whether I would consider coming back to Bakersfield to be the executive director. They didn't have one at that point. Well, that was sort of a little bit of a change. Leaving the Big Apple, coming back to Bakersfield, minor detail, the salary that they could offer me was less than a bonus over there. So it was kind of a big change. And as I talked to my friends, they all said, this is career suicide. You can't just leave and then come back.
Did they use a word called crazy?
Oh, many, many, many times. But, as I began to seek God's face on this. First, I kind of had the little argument with him. Like, I'm doing really good things in New York, and we're working on textbooks, and those are good things. But as I began to prayerfully consider this, I could see what's the value of investing in someone's life versus a pair of $500, $600 Prada shoes. What those shoes give you satisfaction for a couple of days when you wear them, and then there's not a lot of long-term satisfaction because you got to go out and spend and buy some more.
So, Karen, can I ask a question right here? That internal struggle is real, isn't it?
Oh, it's so real.
You got to, when you hear some stories, you got to real that either choice was hard. To not get into the mentoring or to leave New York and get into the mentoring. I always tell people, choices in life are hard, so choose the right hard. You're going to invest time in
Everything's
the hard.
hard.
Yes, it is. You're going to invest time in the hard stuff. So tell us, can you just take a moment, talk about that internal struggle, and was there a defining moment that you said, I am going to move to Bakersfield?
So yes, this struggle, I had this little constant conversation with God, but then there came a moment of peace. That's how I knew that was the right thing to do. Because sometimes when we're in that emotional moment, that's not a good time to make a decision.
No, it's not.
But I finally arrived at a moment of peace where I just said, I'm going to do this. And this is how wonderful God is. So I came to that moment of peace, going back to New York to gather all my things, clear out the apartment, and I get a call from a headhunter saying, we have an opportunity for you. This is the best opportunity you'll ever have.
Does the devil tip his toe into the pot?
You can bring your own team from your former company. You'll be first class, everything. It was a very nice opportunity, but I had already come to a point of being settled. But the reason I'm saying this is look at the grace of God, just to say, I'm not forcing you to do this. It's not like, I'm sending you to this far off land where you're going to suffer. It was like God gave me this choice. And I'm so grateful for that. And it was not, at that point, it was not hard. And I chose to go back and do the interview because I felt it was the responsible thing to do. But I already knew that I was settled in my heart to come back here. And when I made that decision, I knew that it was going to be very different. And I was making that choice out of my own volition and out of a peace that I had.
And did you see your upbringing come in, meaning as you were raised in the ways of the Lord? The Bible says that we're supposed to, through prayer and petition, make a request known to God, and then he gives us the peace that surpasses understanding when we thank him for the results before the results. And you said it. You said, I had peace. Yeah. People look for peace all the time. If you're out there in the audience right now and you're looking for peace, sometimes it's found in trusting God, but not trusting him, in the way that a lot of people do it because he's got the money on the table. He just got a future for you. He had more in store for you. Would you say that, Karen?
He had more in store for me than I ever could have imagined. Yes. That's when I was saying an ordinary person has this extraordinary life, but because of an extraordinary God who prepared the way. And so even coming back to Garden Pathways, it was much harder than working at a Fortune 500 company where I had an assistant and 6 gophers. I mean, this was in addition to all the VPs that we worked together on projects, right? These were just gophers.
You get 45 days of 110 degrees in the summertime.
First class travel versus a Camry.
So you come back to a grassroots nonprofit where you get to be the janitor and the top person, right? So I actually had my first experience ever in my life plunging a toilet. It was on a Saturday when there was nobody on duty and we were having a workshop and something had happened and I had to go take care of that. But that's the goodness of God in preparing us for these life experiences. So having the New York experience of both the creative side and the fiscal side, well, when you're in a nonprofit, you get to do it all. So you are the marketing department, and you are the janitor, and you are the president. You're all of those combined. And so that preparation then moved me on to the next part of the journey, where I was asked to consider the governor's appointment to fill a seat on the Board of Supervisors, Kern County Board of Supervisors, that was going to be vacant because of a supervisor moving on to the Senate. And I thought, this is the craziest thing ever. I am now at Garden Pathways. I've given my life for this, and I thought, this is ridiculous. I had no interest really in politics. I voted on a regular basis, but other than that, I had never given 1 minute of thought to politics.
Isn't it amazing what God can do with a life? That's why you asked me. You're sitting out there in the audience right now, and God can do similar things. I hear these stories, and I think that's what inspires people. I tell people the Bible is the most optimistic book in the world because it always has hope.
Yes.
And hope is what everybody needs as they're sitting out there thinking, what else is my life? You know, hearing your story, was it obedience that you feel got you to where you're at, making the right choice at the right moment?
So it's obedience, but it's also the grace of God. And when you look at the favor of God and how He orders our steps, and He places us in just the right family, He places us with the people that are going to make a difference. And I have to thank my parents who instilled in my brother and me the value of service and the call in our lives to serve others. Also the importance of doing our best. So it was always, we had to work to the point of excellence. So it's not a matter of just saying, oh, God, you'll take care of all of it, which God does guide our steps, but He expects us to work hard with the tools He's given us. And so having that balance in our lives of trusting God, but also knowing that God expects us to use the talents that He's given to us.
You ever think about what Bible character you might be? I've thought about even coming down here this evening.
Which Bible character would you be, Mike?
Today? Well, let's talk about what I probably would be David. I don't have the eloquence or the authority or the leadership of David, but he is a
warrior,
a man of God, called to be a man of God, and he's still a warrior. So I have much more of a combative spirit.
Mike, a lot of people don't know that about you.
Yeah, well.
I remember that one phone call I got from you years ago, and it was during the Hillside Acres, if I can say that. And you just called for prayer.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember saying, Mike, sheath your sword.
Put your sword back in the sheath.
I did. I told Mike that. Mike was ready to wage.
I thought of that 100 times. But Karen is, when I think about Karen, she is Esther, because God called her to something for such a time as this. And I remember when she called me and said, do you think I should seek this appointment by the governor to be a supervisor? And I said, Karen, you should not do this, because you have this cloak of nobility about you, because you work for next to nothing to help people who have nothing to dream for a better future. How can that be anything but noble? And the moment you are sworn in, somebody takes off the cloak of nobility and they start taking shots at you. And they're going to do that to you, Karen. Are you sure you want to do that? With her eyes wide open, she said she was willing to do that because that's what God was calling her to do. That's a great thing.
I love it.
She's Esther.
Yes, and it's amazing to me to hear you have that same tenacity with that as you did moving from New York to Bakersfield. Like, this is what I'm going to do. So I mean, I can imagine if I do call Mike a lot, and we run ideas by each other. And when Mike sometimes says, I don't know if that's a good idea, I listen.
Well, I had the same argument with God when I was given this opportunity, thinking this is crazy. And so it was like, I kept saying no initially. And finally I thought, well, just to be polite, I'll submit the application, but I'll never get it. And then when I got called for the interview, I thought, well, that's crazy. And so you just see how God orders the steps. And He sees so far ahead of what we're able to see, and all of that preparation. And so, I think when I was given the opportunity to serve on the board with Mike and other wonderful colleagues, I got to bring the side of the nonprofit also. So it was like the preparation of a Fortune 500 company, being an executive there, but also being in a nonprofit, and all of us working together for the good of our community. But you think, well, how does this immigrant ever get to do this kind of thing, right? And then you start seeing the preparation of God. And the same thing happened just becoming mayor. It's like, how does that happen out of 25 candidates? And
well, I saw the tenacity in you that night.
You didn't even go to a runoff, did you?
I did go to a runoff.
You had a runoff?
But you think about this. I'm only the second woman mayor since the 1800s. And then of Asian descent, which there are a number of female mayors of cities where there is a very large Asian population, predominant Asian population, but that is not the case over here. So it was just a little bit different.
Mike has a district that would let people know that, right?
Well, yeah, but you are. It is correct that you are. There's no logical reason for you to be the mayor of Bakersfield.
Yeah, so when you look at the natural, sometimes the outward things don't line up with God's supernatural intervention. Because I always just thought, like, I wasn't a poli-sci major. It's like a music major. People always ask me, like, what do you need to do to prepare to become mayor?
So would you say some of the journey has taken you that you found, and this is just my thought process listening to you because I love people's stories, that you've been able to work with left and right brain thinkers throughout your whole experience? Because being in the corporate world, you had the numbers guys who are the right brain thinkers, right, Mike? Yeah.
That's what I am.
And then you have the left brain thinkers who are more artistic and creative, but you've been able to bring that together, it seems like.
And that's been a privilege. I'm just grateful that I have had that opportunity to do that. And what I see is when we all come together, we may not have the same giftings, we may not agree 100%, but it's as we bring our talents together that so much good can come out of that.
We're more effective together. I've always seen that. I mean, Mike and I know with our church, we have such a large demographic, social, economical, but it's fun to go to our church service and see that in play every service. You look down the row and you're seeing people from different social economical statuses and different geographic or even racial, sitting there worshiping the same God, and how much power they have coming together as a group. So I love that.
I think it's interesting that what you see about Karen Goh is just one little facet of who Karen Goh is. And what she does as mayor, you might have attended an event where she cut a ribbon to open a store, or
I think we have one of those pictures, guys, don't we?
We have one of those.
Yeah.
You may have seen Karen.
Yeah, there you are. That's when you won, right?
That was the announcement.
Okay.
It's like, vote for me. That announcement.
An unsavory part of politics that you have to go out and ask people to vote for you.
You could run through them and come up to that picture. That's the swearing in.
Sworn in.
And then there's CSUB with. Oh, we don't have a ribbon cutting? Oh, I thought I gave one. So I have one here.
But that's only part of what she does.
Yes.
For example, when all of the Black Lives Matters movement was going across the country, there were some unfortunate demonstrations that turned into being violent. Bakersfield was on the very edge of that happening here. Not a handful of people know that she was behind the scenes talking with the leader of this faction and that faction. Okay, how can we make your event be successful? How do you accomplish your goals? How do we protect our community? People have no idea of the responsibility that she takes upon herself to fully fulfill the calling she has. That it's so much more than just what it appears to be.
Well, I did something today. I typed in leadership of Bakersfield, and Karen's picture comes up first a lot, but so does yours. So I'm privileged here to be sitting at a table with two people who have sound biblical principles that they live by, that when you go to Google and you ask who the leaders of Bakersfield are, there's others, but I just did that today. And Karen's face comes up.
Neither of us have ever done that, so we don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I did, so I can tell you my result from my Google search history, and Karen's face comes bam. And I was thinking, what? To me, as I see it, I'm like, oh, man, that's a lot of weight. Oh, did you? Okay. This is the one of you cutting a ribbon.
And so just as Mike was saying, people probably see on my social media a lot of ribbon cuttings and events.
She takes a few pictures.
That's only because that's what we post, right?
Yes.
It's not all of those meetings. It's not all of the behind-the-scenes conversations that happen, which really is the crux of my work. But it's always a joy to celebrate our economy growing. But there's so much more that we have the privilege of doing as elected officials behind the scenes.
I think a lot of people, and Mike knows this, they'll call me and they'll ask about our church and they'll think, oh, it's easy or something. I've got one friend that always kind of pokes me and says, so what do you do at the church again? Do you read the Bible and play harps and sing songs? I go, that's what we do. But they don't get it. But when I see you, and I've been to city council meetings where you're there, I've been to other meetings where you're there, you're at the forefront, like Mike says. And both of you are. I mean, it's a privilege to know both of you, because I know what genuine human beings that you both are, and that you have that ability to be the face of our city, the face of our county, and that inspires me even more to hear your story here today. It's an incredible story. It's an incredible journey.
Because of an incredible God.
I know.
Extraordinary God, right? And that's what we all get to experience, is his grace on our life. And so then incredible things happen. I'm in a little group that texts in the morning, just encouraging words, and we were talking about trusting in God, and I was reminded of a line from Like a River Glorious. And there's a line that says, they who trust him wholly find him wholly true. They who trust him wholly find him wholly true. And when we're able to put our trust in God, knowing that he has the best, the very best for our lives, and he guides us.
I had a guy challenge me a couple of weeks ago. He goes, just give me a simple illustration. Don't point to the Bible about what it would be like if I gave, God, the responsibility of my life. I go, well, think about driving to the city of Los Angeles with somebody else driving, and you want to get to Wilshire Boulevard. I said, there's a lot of ways to get there. You're trusting. I said, God has a lot of ways to get us there. You're trusting him to be the driver to get there. And he's like, oh, okay. I always think that, everybody's past different. God's got a plan. And like you said, people have to trust him wholly. And when you're doing that, it gets uncomfortable at moments in your life. But I think we're all sitting here saying that he is worthy. He is worthy.
Another thing I'm going to say about my friend Karen is that she serves for the right purpose because she's serving.
Yes.
A lot of people think they want to be in politics because they think it is something that it's not. And it's not glamorous. It's not a ticket to fame or wealth. It's none of those things. It's a lot of hard work. And she is just a servant who is doing that to make our community better. And we're blessed to have people like her that do it.
Yep. Well, I think Jesus said, "Blessed are the servants." Basically, hey, we've come to serve. Jesus said it himself. I came to serve, not be served.
What a privilege it is for all of us to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to be able to extend his heart to our community. And that's the spirit in which I serve. I think about just being Jesus to our community. And it's not only that part, but it's bringing the power of Jesus, the ability to solve even the most complex, hard issues that in the natural, none of us as elected officials or human beings can solve.
The most naive assumption that the world makes about Christians and Christian leaders is that because they are meek, they are weak. Yeah. She is not week.
I've seen that demonstrated.
Either she runs a meeting. If you don't follow the rules of the meeting, you will leave the meeting. I was at one of these Black Lives Matters demonstrations. A deal had been worked out with the black pastors in town that the demonstrators would move off the stage. We would move up. We'd do a prayer and some songs, and then we'd move off, and they'd come back in. They broke their word, and they came storming into the midst of our time. I am twice as big as Karen Goh. You know, she is not a person of big stature, and I'm standing in this group, and you know, I was raised in East Bakersfield. I know what it feels like when something's about to go down. You know, there's a certain vibe in the space, and something's about to go down. And as I am standing there, about 30 feet in front of me is Karen Goh, closer to the stage, 30 feet closer than me. And as I'm standing there, and it's a prayer time, she has her hands up and her eyes closed. I have my eyes wide open, looking about me to see who are these people that are running right next to me, because I'm preparing to deal with it. She never breaks form as they run right beside her. I know she could feel the breeze of their bodies trying to see if they could get a rise out of her, and not a blink. You know, so there's courage and strength in there too. So
I saw that first night when I went home and told my wife. I said, I saw something tonight. Saw Karen Goh. She's the choice for mayor.
Yeah,
I saw that night.
That was clear in that room.
I love that.
A lot of nice people. A lot of people aspire to do good things, but one person came to the game ready to win.
I love it.
Ready to be effective.
I love to connect with you. Karen, is there anything you would like to say that we haven't given you an opportunity to say to the audience, or leave us with something?
Well, what a privilege it is to work together with you and with your church. And thank you so much for all of the service that you give to our community. I love coming out to your
you guys have a picture
twice a year where we're all serving together and thousands of people go out there, not to convert people. The first intention there is just to serve, right? And then if people in the process come to know Jesus, that's part of it, but not going out there just to say, I'm only going to serve because I want you to listen to me preach. It's really being able to take the genuine heart of Jesus out there, first in love, in service. And I really appreciate that about you. And
right behind Karen in that picture is Chris Parlier, who is a member of the Bakersfield City Council.
Yes, he is.
A great man, another man of strength, but
faith,
who's willing to lay down his strength so that he can serve people, and he's a man of faith as well.
I think people need to know those things, and I love having you on the show. And Mike, I always like to be around you. You're a great co-host, and maybe one day I can have you as a co-host, Karen.
Well,
I'd love to.
We might consider that.
Yes, I know.
It pays big money.
Yeah, that's what I can tell.
A half a bottle of water.
This lovely glass of water.
Mike had a complaint. I got to say this. Mike had a complaint. He says, so on lunch break, we don't get to eat lunch. I go, no. Mike and I, as our producer, we've been challenged that several times, so we're trying to remedy that. Karen,
thank you so much.
Thank you for serving our city, serving our community, and serving Christ. Mike, it's always a pleasure to be with you, Mike. You do the same all the time.
Nice to see you, Mayor.
Great to see you too, Mike.
Proud to be friends with the mayor.
Glad to have you guys tune in today. If you have questions, please, Pastor Tom at vbf.org. Mike, can they get a hold of you? Maybe just...
emails mike@maggard.com.
How about you, Mary?
mayor@bakersfieldcity.us.
You have a great person that helps you, Danielle.
She's wonderful.
She is. I want to give her a shout out. Danielle, you're a blessing to have a conversation with. So you guys have a great afternoon. God bless.